sat on the same bench every day. It was a simple metal bench near the large window of Harmony Station's observation deck. From here, he could watch the ships come and go, freighters carrying supplies, passenger vessels moving between worlds, military ships on patrol, their weapons quiet now that the war was over. Watched them all and he felt nothing. 8 months had passed since he returned from the frontier wars. 8 months since he stopped being a combat medic and started being just another veteran with nowhere to go. The war had ended with treaties and handshakes and promises of peace between humans and the alien species they had fought. Everyone said it was a new beginning, was not sure what it was a beginning of. Harmony Station was supposed to be proof that different species could live together. Humans and a dozen other races all shared this massive station floating in neutral space. They had their own quarters, their own shops, their own places of worship, but they rarely mixed. The observation deck was one of the few common areas, and even here the species kept to their own corners. Preferred the quiet, at least that was what he told himself. The human quarter of the station was not a bad place to live, had a small apartment with a window that looked out at the stars. He had enough money from his military service to pay rent and buy food. He had everything he needed to survive. But surviving was not the same as living, and had forgotten how to do the second thing. Other humans on the station avoided him. They could tell he was a veteran from the way he walked, the way he watched every door, the way he sometimes flinched at loud noises. Veterans made people uncomfortable. They were reminders of things everyone wanted to forget. So ate alone, walked alone, and sat on this bench alone. Were the worst about avoiding humans. They were a proud species, tall and covered in scales that shifted color with their moods. They had wings folded against their backs, though the station's gravity made flying difficult. Their eyes were large and golden, and they looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. They had nearly won the war. They had better ships, better weapons, and soldiers who could breathe fire in close combat. But humans had something they did not expect. Humans refused to surrender. Humans kept fighting even when they should have lost, and in the end, both sides grew too tired to continue. Had seen up close during the war. He had seen them as enemies. He had also seen them as patients, bleeding and dying just like human soldiers. As a medic, he had treated anyone who needed help. His commanding officers had not always approved but did not care about approval. He cared about doing what was right. Now he sat on his bench and watched a family walk past on the far side of the observation deck. The adults held their heads high and did not look in his direction. But the children were different. 3 young, their scales still soft and their wings too small for flight, kept glancing at. One of them, a female with blue-green scales, stared openly until her father pulled her along. Looked away. Children were curious. It meant nothing. The afternoon passed slowly. Watched the stars and thought about nothing in particular. His mind was good at being empty now. It was easier than remembering. A voice interrupted his silence. The human social worker assigned to veterans on the station stood beside him with a cup of coffee in her hand. She was a kind woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a patient smile. She visited once a week whether he wanted her to or not. Sat down beside him. She did not ask permission. She never did. "You look thin," she said. "Are you eating?" "I eat," replied. "Real food, not just protein bars." Shrugged, sighed. This was how their conversations usually went. She asked questions. He gave short answers. Eventually she would leave and he would be alone again. Said, her voice softer now, "I worry about you. You never leave this deck. You never talk to anyone. That is not healthy." "I talk to you once a week, and only because I show up whether you want me to or not." Took a sip of her coffee. "There are programs, you know, support groups for veterans, activities, ways to connect with people." Shook his head. "I am fine." "You are not fine. You are surviving. There is a difference." Did not answer. He knew she was right, but knowing something and doing something about it were two different things. The war had taken pieces of him that he did not know how to get back. His ability to trust, his ability to hope, his ability to see a future that was worth walking toward. All of it had been left behind on battlefields and in medical tents filled with screaming soldiers. Finished her coffee and stood up. "I will come back next week. Try to eat something green before then, and maybe talk to one person who is not me." She walked away, watched her go, then turned back to the window. The stars did not care if he was fine or not. They just burned in the darkness, constant and cold. Movement caught his eye. Near a pillar about 20 meters away, three small figures were watching him, the children from earlier. They had come back without their parents. The blue-green female was in front, her golden eyes fixed on with obvious curiosity. Behind her, a smaller male with gray scales tried to hide, and behind him, the smallest of the three peeked around the pillar with wide eyes. Met the female's gaze. For a moment they simply looked at each other. Then the children scattered, running away on their short legs, their tiny wings flapping uselessly behind them. Almost smiled, almost. He turned back to the window and resumed his watch over the empty space. He thought about words. Talk to one person who is not me. He thought about the curious eyes of those children. He thought about how strange it was that they had looked at him without fear or hatred. But then he pushed the thoughts away. Children were curious. It meant nothing. Tomorrow he would sit on this bench again and everything would be the same as today. That was how his life worked now. The same bench, the same stars, the same silence. Did not know that those children would come back. He did not know that they would change everything. He was just a young veteran waiting alone, and he had forgotten how to expect anything good. But good things do not always wait to be expected. Sometimes they just show up, small and scaled, and full of questions that adults have forgotten how to ask. The next day returned to his bench at the same time he always did. The observation deck was quiet in the early afternoon. Most species were working or resting, and the large window offered an uninterrupted view of the stars. Like this time best. No crowds, no noise, just the hum of the station and the silent movement of distant ships. He had been sitting for about an hour when he noticed them again. The three children were back. This time they were not hiding behind a pillar. They stood about 10 meters away, watching him openly. The female with blue-green scales was in front just like yesterday. Her posture was straight, her small wings pressed tight against her back. She looked like she was preparing for battle. Ignored them. He turned his gaze back to the window and pretended to be interested in a cargo ship that was slowly docking at the station's outer ring. Children were curious. They would get bored and leave eventually. But they did not leave. Instead, the female started walking toward him. Her steps were careful and measured, like she was approaching a wild animal. The two smaller children followed behind her, staying close but letting her lead. Watched her from the corner of his eye. She stopped about 2 meters from his bench. Up close, he could see that her scales had tiny patterns on them, like frost on a window. Her golden eyes were bright with intelligence and something that looked like determination. "Why do you sit alone every day?" she asked. Her voice was higher than an adult, but her words were clear and formal. She had learned Galactic Common in a classroom, not on the streets, could tell the difference. He considered not answering. He considered standing up and walking away, but something about the directness of her question stopped him. No one had asked him that in a long time. Most people just assumed they knew the answer. "I have nowhere else to be," he said, "and no one waiting for me." The female tilted her head. Her scales shifted slightly, taking on a purple tint that did not know how to read. "That is strange. Among my people, being alone is a punishment. It is what we do to criminals and outcasts. Are you a criminal?" "No." "Then why are you punished?" Almost laughed. He caught himself just in time, turning the sound into a cough. "Humans are different. Sometimes we choose to be alone." "That is foolish," the female declared. She said it with such certainty that could not argue. She turned to the two children behind her and spoke in the language. They seemed to be having a quick discussion. Then she turned back to, "I am Sira, this is Nix." She pointed to the gray-scaled male who was trying to hide behind her. "And this is Trill." She pointed to the smallest one, whose scales were a mix of green and gold. "We have decided to sit with you." "I did not ask for company," said. "You did not ask to be alone either. You said you have no one waiting. Now you have us." Before could protest, Sira walked past him and sat on the far end of the bench. Nix followed, taking a spot in the middle. Trill climbed up last, struggling a little with the height of the seat. The smallest child ended up right next to, close enough that he could feel the warmth coming from their scaled body. Did not know what to do. He had not sat this close to anyone in months. He had not had a conversation this long in weeks. Part of him wanted to stand up and leave. But another part, a part he had almost forgotten existed, wanted to stay. Trill reached into a small bag they carried and pulled out a piece of fruit. It was round and purple, with a soft skin that looked like velvet. Trill held it out too. "For you," Trill said. Their galactic common was broken, the words coming out slowly and carefully. Sharing food is friendship, my teacher said. Stared at the fruit. In culture, sharing food was a significant gesture. He knew this from his time as a medic, when he had treated prisoners who refused to eat human rations because accepting food meant accepting a bond. For a child to offer food to a stranger was either very innocent or very brave. Thank you, said. He took the fruit. Trill's face split into a wide smile showing rows of small, sharp teeth. It should have been frightening. Instead, it was oddly endearing. Bit into the fruit. It was sweet and slightly sour, with a texture like a ripe pear. Trill watched him eat with obvious satisfaction. Good, Trill asked. Good, agreed. Sierra leaned forward to look at him around Nyx. You are a soldier. I can tell from how you sit, always watching the doors, always ready to move. Nodded. I was a medic. I helped injured soldiers. On both sides. The question surprised him. Looked at Sierra, trying to read her expression. Her scales had shifted to a calm blue color. She was not accusing him of anything. She was just asking. Yes, said. On both sides. When someone is bleeding, it does not matter what species they are. Nick spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. My uncle says humans are dangerous. He says we should not trust them. Your uncle might be right, said honestly. Humans can be dangerous, so can anyone if they have a reason. Nyx thought about this. Do you have a reason to be dangerous to us? No, I'm just tired. The four of them sat in silence for a while. Ships passed by the window. Station announcements echoed through the deck in multiple languages. A group of traders walked past, their long robes brushing the floor. They looked at the strange group on the bench but did not stop. Sierra spoke again. The adults say the war is over. They say we are all friends now, but no one acts like friends. The humans stay in their area, my people stay in ours. Everyone talks about peace, but no one sits together. Peace is hard, said. Harder than war in some ways. In war, you know who your enemies are. In peace, you have to figure out how to stop seeing enemies everywhere. Have you figured it out? Shook his head, not yet. Sierra nodded like this was a reasonable answer. Then we will practice together. Trill says sharing food is friendship, so we are friends now, and friends sit together. Looked at the three children sharing his bench. Sierra with her determined eyes, Nyx with his quiet watchfulness, Trill with their innocent smile. They were so young. They had probably lost family in the war, just like he had lost friends, but they were still willing to reach out to a stranger from an enemy species. Maybe that was the difference between children and adults. Children had not yet learned to hold on to hate. They could still see people instead of enemies. All right, said, friends sit together. Trill clapped their small hands in delight. Nyx's scales shifted to a warmer color, and Sierra smiled just a little, like she had won a victory she had been fighting for. Did not know it yet, but this small moment would be the first step on a long road. A road that would lead him out of his loneliness and into something he had stopped believing in. A future. A week passed and the children came back every day. They arrived in the early afternoon, found on his bench and sat with him until evening. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. Sometimes Trill brought food to share, and they ate together while watching the ships outside the window. Learned things about them. Sierra was the daughter of Ambassador, one of the most important on the station. Her father had helped negotiate the peace treaty that ended the war. She was proud of him but also frustrated. She said he talked about unity but never practiced it. He wanted peace between species, but he did not want his daughter talking to humans. Nyx came from a military family. His father and two uncles had fought in the war. One uncle never came back. Nyx did not talk about this much but could see the weight of it in the way the boy held himself. He understood that weight. He carried it too. Trill was an orphan. Their parents had died during a human attack on a transport ship. The station's community had taken Trill in, passing the child from family to family. No one wanted to adopt an orphan from the war. It was too painful a reminder. Listened to their stories without judgment. He knew what it was like to carry loss. He knew what it was like to be alone in a crowd of people who did not understand. On the seventh day, Sierra asked the question he'd been expecting. Tell us about the war. They were sitting in their usual spots. The observation deck was emptier than usual, most residents attending some kind of cultural festival in the commercial district. Had the window almost to himself, except for his 3 small companions. "Why do you want to know?" asked. "Because adults never tell us the truth," Sira said. "They say the war was necessary. They say we were defending our people. They say humans started it. But when I ask for details, they change the subject. I want to know what really happened." Nix nodded. "My father says the same things over and over, like a recording. He never talks about what he actually saw." Understood that too. It was easier to repeat simple stories than to face complicated memories. War was not clean. It was not good versus evil. It was just people hurting each other because they could not find another way. "The war was bad," said slowly. "For both sides. I was a medic. My job was to keep soldiers alive long enough to get them to a hospital ship. Sometimes I could save them, sometimes I could not." "Did you only save humans?" Sira asked. Shook his head. "I saved anyone I could reach. Human, anyone. When someone is dying in front of you, you do not think about what species they are. You just try to help." "The adults say humans are cruel," Nix said quietly. "They say humans enjoy killing." "Some humans are cruel," admitted. "Some are too. Cruelty is not limited to one species. But most soldiers I knew were not cruel. They were scared and tired and wanted to go home, just like your people." Trill was listening with wide eyes. "You help enemy soldiers." "Once," said. He paused, remembering. The memory was clear even after all this time. Some things you never forget. "There was a battle on a moon called Kestrel 4. My unit was retreating through a forest. I got separated from the others. I found a soldier in a clearing. He was badly wounded. Burn damage from one of our weapons. He should have been dead already, but he was still breathing." The children were silent. Even Sira had stopped fidgeting. "I knew I should keep moving," continued. "If I stayed, I might get captured or killed. And helping an enemy soldier was against orders. My commanders would not have approved." He paused. "But I could not leave him there to die alone, so I stayed. I treated his wounds as best I could, stopped the bleeding, gave him water, talked to him so he would not be afraid." "What happened to him?" Sira asked. "Other found us, his unit. They almost killed me when they saw me kneeling over their comrade. But the soldier I saved, he spoke up. He told them I had helped him. They took me prisoner instead of shooting me." Rolled up his left sleeve. On his forearm there was a long scar, pale against his skin. The children leaned in to look at it. 2 weeks later my prison camp was attacked. Human forces trying to rescue prisoners. There was an explosion. A wall fell on me. I could not move," traced the scar with his finger. "The same soldier was there. He had recovered from his wounds and been sent to guard the camp. When the wall fell, he could have left me. Instead, he pulled me out. He saved my life." Trill reached out and touched the scar with gentle fingers. Their scales were cool against skin. "He saved you because you save him." "I think so. Or maybe he just did not want to owe a human anything." Smiled slightly at the memory. "He told me his name before they moved me to another camp." Sira's scales shifted to a bright orange. Did not know what that color meant, but her expression told him it was important. She repeated, "That is my family name." Looked at her. "Your father is ambassador." "Yes, and was my uncle, my father's brother." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Had not known. He had never connected the name of the soldier he saved to the ambassador who helped end the war. It had been one moment in a war full of moments, significant to him but lost in the bigger picture. "What happened to him?" asked two. Sira's scales faded to a dull gray. "He died 6 months after the war ended. His wounds from the war never healed right. His heart gave out." Felt a weight settle in his chest. He had saved his life, but only for a little while. The war still took him in the end, just more slowly. "I am sorry," said. "My father never believed the story," Sira said quietly. "Uncle told him about the human medic who saved him, about how you stayed when you could have run, about how you talked to him so he would not be scared. But my father said it was impossible. He said no human would do such a thing." Nix looked at with new eyes. "But you did." "I did what anyone should do," said. "I helped someone who needed help. Species did not matter. Only the person in front of me mattered." Trill climbed into his lap without asking. The child wrapped small arms around his waist and held on tight. Sat very still, not sure what to do. He had not been hugged in a long time. "You good person," Trill said into his shirt. "Sira's father wrong about humans." Put his hand on Trill's back. The child's scales were warm now, heated by emotion. He could feel Trill's heartbeat, fast and steady like a small drum. Maybe, said, or maybe I am just one human, and you have to judge each person one at a time. Sierra stood up. Her scales were shifting through colors could not read. I am going to tell my father. He should know the truth. Sierra said carefully, that might cause problems. Your father may not want to hear it, especially not from you. I do not care. He needs to know that the story was real, that humans can be good. She looked at with fierce determination. That you are good. She walked away before could stop her. Nix followed after a moment, looking back once with an expression that might have been gratitude. Trill stayed in his lap, still holding on. She's stubborn, Trill said. I noticed. You scared. Thought about it. Was he scared? Ambassador was powerful. If he decided was a threat to his daughter, there would be consequences, but found that he did not care. For the first time in months, something mattered more than his own safety. These children mattered. A little, admitted, but that is okay. Being scared does not mean you stop doing the right thing. Trill nodded like this was wise advice. Then the child looked up at with serious golden eyes. I stay with you until Sierra comes back. Friends do not leave friends alone. His throat felt tight. He had to swallow twice before he could speak. Thank you, Trill. They sat together on the bench, waiting for whatever would come next. Outside the window, the stars burned on, indifferent to the small moments of connection happening below, but was not indifferent. For the first time in 8 months, he felt like he was part of something. And that feeling was worth being scared for. 2 days passed without any sign of Sierra. Sat on his bench as usual, but the hours felt longer without her constant questions and bold opinions. Nix came once, staying only long enough to say that Sierra was confined to her family quarters. Her father had not taken the news well. Trill came every day regardless. The smallest of the three refused to stay away, appearing at the same time each afternoon with food to share and quiet company to offer. Found himself looking forward to these visits more than he wanted to admit. On the 3rd day, the confrontation came. Was sitting in his usual spot, Trill beside him, when he noticed a disturbance at the far end of the observation deck. A tall male was walking toward them with purpose in every step. His scales were deep red, almost black, and his golden eyes burned with barely controlled anger. Behind him came 2 station security officers and a small crowd of curious onlookers. Ambassador had arrived. Stood slowly. He knew who this was without being told. Sierra looked like her father, the same set of the jaw, the same fierce eyes, but where Sierra's fierceness came from curiosity, her father's came from fury. Stay behind me, said quietly to Trill. No, Trill said, standing up on the bench. I'm not scared of Sierra's father. Did not have time to argue. Stopped 3 meters away, his wings half spread in a display of dominance. The gesture was meant to intimidate, had seen it before during the war. He did not flinch. You are the human, said. His voice was deep and cold. The one who has been filling my daughter's head with lies. I have not lied to your daughter, Ambassador. I have answered her questions honestly. Lies, repeated. You claim to have saved my brother's life. A convenient story told to a child who does not know better. Did you think she would not tell me? Did you think I would believe such nonsense? I did not tell her to make you believe anything. I told her because she asked about the war, and it was the truth. Scales rippled with color, shifting through shades of red and purple. The truth, a human showing mercy to a soldier, risking his life for an enemy. No human would do such a thing. This human did. The 2 security officers shifted nervously. The crowd behind them had grown larger. Humans and other species watched the confrontation with various expressions. Some looked worried. Others looked eager, hopping for violence. Kept his voice calm. Your brother's name was, I found him in a forest on Kestrel 4. He had degree burns on his chest and left side. His breathing was shallow, and he was going into shock. I used burn gel from my med kit and gave him 2 doses of pain medication. I stayed with him for 3 hours until his unit found us. His eyes narrowed, details anyone could have invented. He had a scar on his right hand, 3 parallel lines like claw marks. He told me he got it as a child, fighting with his older brother over a toy. Paused. He told me his older brother cheated. Something flickered in his expression. His scales shifted again, the red fatting slightly. Told you that? He talked to me while I treated his wounds. He was scared and in pain. Talking helped him stay calm. The security officers looked at each other, uncertain. This was not going the way anyone had expected. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift in tension. 2 weeks later, your brother saved my life, continued. A wall collapsed on me during a battle at the prison camp where I was being held. He could have let me die. Instead, he pulled me out. He told me we were even, rolled up his sleeve, showing the scar. This is where the debris cut me. Your brother bandaged it himself before the guards took me away. Stared at the scar. His wings slowly folded back against his body. The aggressive posture faded, replaced by something more complicated. Recognized it. It was the look of someone whose certainties were crumbling. Before could respond, Sierra pushed through the crowd. Nyx was right behind her. They had escaped from wherever they had been confined and run here as fast as their short legs could carry them. Father, Sierra said, stepping between, and her scales were bright orange with emotion, is telling the truth. You know he is. You have always known Uncle's story was real. You just did not want to believe it. Sierra, go back to our quarters. No, I am tired of pretending. I am tired of hearing you talk about peace while treating every human like an enemy. Sierra's voice was rising. Has been kinder to me in 2 weeks than most adults have been in my whole life. He answers my questions. He tells me the truth. He treats me like I matter. Nick stepped forward too, his quiet voice steady. Told us about the war without making us feel like we were too young to understand. He does not pretend that everything is simple. He is the only adult who has been honest with us. Trill climbed down from the bench and walked over to stand with Sierra and Nyx. The 3 children faced the ambassador together, a united front. Is our friend, Trill said simply. You should not be mean to our friend. Looked at the 3 children, then back at the children. The anger had drained from his face, leaving behind something that looked almost like shame. The crowd watched in silence. Even the security officers seemed to have forgotten why they were there. Spoke of you, said finally. His voice was quiet now, meant only for. In his last months, he talked about the human medic who stayed with him when any reasonable person would have run. He said you talked to him about your family, about your home, about the dog you had as a child. Nodded. His name was Buster, brown and white. He died when I was 12. Closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, the hostility was gone. I did not want to believe, said. It was easier to think my brother had been confused, that the pain had made him imagine things. Because if the story was true, then everything I believed about humans was wrong, and I did not want to be wrong. Being wrong is not a weakness, said, refusing to admit it is. Was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the security officers and dismissed them with a wave of his hand. The crowd began to disperse, the excitement over. There would be no fight today, no drama, just 2 former enemies standing in an observation deck, trying to understand each other. Why did you stay with him? Asked. My brother, you could have escaped. You could have saved yourself. Why did you risk everything for an enemy soldier? Thought about the question. He had asked himself the same thing many times. Because he was scared, said, and alone, and I knew what that felt like. He looked at the 3 children standing together, watching him with hopeful eyes. Enemies are easy. You just have to hate them. But when you look past the uniform and the scales and the politics, you see a person, and I could not leave a person to die alone in the dark. Nodded slowly. He looked at his daughter, at the other children, at the human veteran who had somehow become their friend. I have spent years negotiating peace treaties, said. I have argued for cooperation between species, but I never believed it was truly possible. I thought the hatred was too deep, the wounds too fresh. He looked at with something that might have been respect. Perhaps I was wrong about that too. Sierra moved to her father's side and took his hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. A bridge between the anger of the past and the hope of the future. Can still be our friend? Sierra asked. Looked down at his daughter. Then he looked at, standing alone by his bench, a veteran who had somehow found the strength to care when caring was hardest. Yes, said, I think perhaps he must be. Trill cheered and ran back to, wrapping arms around his leg. Nick smiled for the first time since had known him, and Sierra grinned with the satisfaction of someone who had fought a battle and won. Did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He just stood there, surrounded by children who had chosen him, watched by an ambassador who was learning to see past old hatreds. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. A week had passed since the confrontation. Life on Harmony Station continued as it always had, ships coming and going, species keeping to their own corners. the promise of peace remaining more promise than reality. But for everything had changed. He still sat on his bench every afternoon, but he no longer sat alone. Today, the observation deck was quiet. Watched a passenger liner dock at the station's main port, its hull gleaming in the light of distant stars. Beside him sat Ambassador, silent and thoughtful. The two of them had been sitting together for nearly an hour without speaking. It was a strange kind of companionship, born from a shared connection to a dead soldier and 3 persistent children. The children would arrive soon. They always did. But for now, it was just the veteran and the diplomat trying to figure out what came next. Broke the silence first. The council has been debating for months about whether humans can truly be trusted, about whether peace is sustainable. "What do you think?" asked. "I used to think it was impossible. Humans and fought for so long. The hatred runs deep on both sides. I have seen what humans can do when they are angry. I have seen the destruction they are capable of." Paused. "But I have also seen what my brother saw, a human who chose mercy over survival, a human who stayed with an enemy soldier because he could not bear to leave him alone." Did not respond. There was nothing to say that would not sound like he was trying to take credit for something that had simply been the right thing to do. "The council meets tomorrow," continued. "There will be a vote on a new integration proposal, mixed housing districts, shared schools for children, joint business ventures. It is ambitious. Many believe it will fail." "What do you believe?" Looked at him. "I believe my daughter is smarter than I am. She saw something in you that I refuse to see. If children can look past old hatreds, perhaps adults can learn to do the same." Thought about this? Children have not learned to hold on to anger yet. They see people, not enemies. Maybe that is why they are better at peace than we are. "Perhaps," smiled slightly. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. "My brother said something similar. In his last days, he told me that the only hope for our species was the next generation. He said we had to stop teaching them to hate." He was wise. He was dying. Sometimes that gives a person clarity. Turned back to the window. "I am going to speak in favor of the integration proposal tomorrow. It will not be popular. Many of my colleagues believe humans are too dangerous to trust. But I will tell them what you told me, that enemies are easy, seeing people is harder." Felt something shift in his chest. For months he had felt useless, a broken veteran with no purpose. Now somehow, his simple act of kindness years ago was rippling outward, affecting decisions he could never have imagined. "I do not know if it will matter," said, "but I have to try, for my brother, for my daughter, for the future they both believed in." "It matters," said quietly. "Even if it does not change anything right away, it matters." They sat in silence again, but it was a different kind of silence now, not the empty quiet of loneliness, the full quiet of understanding. Movement at the edge of the deck caught attention. 3 small figures were approaching, Sierra in front as always, Nix close behind, and Trill running ahead of both, arms waving with excitement. Trill shouted, ignoring the stares of other station residents, "We brought something." The children reached the bench, breathless and grinning. Sierra was carrying a small box, decorated with colorful patterns that recognized as traditional designs. "What is this?" asked. Sierra placed the box in his lap. "Open it." Looked at, who shrugged. "I do not know either. They have been secretive all morning." Opened the box. Inside, nestled in soft fabric, was a piece of carved stone. It was shaped like a small flame, polished smooth and warm to the touch. Turned it over in his hands, admiring the craftsmanship. "It is a hearthstone," Sierra explained. "In our culture, it represents family, the fire that keeps everyone warm. When someone gives you a hearthstone, it means you are part of their family." Stared at the stone. His throat felt tight. "We saved up for it," Nick said quietly. "All 3 of us. It took 2 months." "You are our family now," Trill said, climbing onto the bench beside him. "Human or not, you belong with us." Did not trust himself to speak. He held the stone and felt its warmth against his palm, and tried to remember the last time anyone had given him something that mattered. "You do not have to say anything," Sierra said, watching him with those fierce, understanding eyes. "I know humans are not good at emotions, but we wanted you to know." Laughed. It was a real laugh, something he had not heard from himself in a long time. "I am not sure if that is a compliment or an insult." "Both," Sierra said, grinning. Stood up. "I should go. I have meetings to prepare for." He looked then at the children. but I think I will come back tomorrow if you do not mind the company." "You are always welcome," said. The words felt strange in his mouth, but they were true. Nodded once, then walked away. Watched him go, this proud ambassador who had learned to see past his own prejudice. It was not an easy thing to do, knew that better than anyone. Appeared a few minutes later. She had her usual cup of coffee and her usual worried expression. But when she saw sitting with the 3 children, the worry faded into something that looked like relief. "Well," she said, stopping in front of the bench, "this is new. This is Sierra, Nix, and Trill, my friends." "Friends?" Raised an eyebrow. "Last week you said you preferred being alone." "I was wrong." Smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and surprised. "I have been trying to get you to talk to people for months, and you go and make friends with children instead. They are very persuasive." Trill beamed. "We are persistent." Laughed and sat down on the other end of the bench. For a moment, the 5 of them sat together in comfortable silence. A human social worker, a human veteran, and 3 children who had decided that species did not matter as much as connection. Looked at the hearthstone in his hand. Family. He had not had one of those in a long time. His parents were gone. His friends from before the war had drifted away. He had thought he was meant to be alone. But these children had found him. They had seen past his silence and his scars and his sadness. They had reached out when anyone else would have walked away. Humans were supposed to be the resilient ones, the species that never gave up, the ones who kept fighting even when the odds were impossible. But maybe resilience was not just about fighting. Maybe it was also about accepting help, about letting others in, about admitting that you could not heal alone. Sierra said, "Yes. Are you happy?" Considered the question. He looked at the children beside him, at who had never stopped trying to help, at the window full of stars, the same stars he had watched alone for so many empty months. "I'm getting there," he said. Sierra nodded, satisfied. "Good, because we are not going anywhere." "None of us are," Nix added. Trill snuggled closer to his side. "Family stays together." Put his arm around the smallest child and held the hearthstone close. Outside, the ships continued their endless journeys. The station hummed with the sounds of 100 species trying to coexist, and on a simple metal bench near the observation window, a young veteran who had been waiting alone finally found what he had stopped looking for. Not just friends, not just purpose. Home. The war had taken so much from him, but peace, it turned out, could give things back. All you had to do was let it. All you had to do was let curious children ask their questions and share their food and refuse to leave you alone. Smiled, and for the first time in years, the smile reached his eyes. The dragon kids had made their entrance, and nothing would ever be the same.